Hello, everybody. This is Mark Smith with Family Tree Life Coaches. I am here with my new video recording partner, Dr. Larry Taylor.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to the show, Larry.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are going to call our video shows the Mark and Dr. Larry Decoders of Life Happening Show.
That's a long title.
Well, we might play with it. Mark and Dr. Larry Decoders of Life Happening Show, Episode 1. The first order of business, since most of you folks know me, I've evolved. I've changed since a lot of you have watched my videos. So I'm going to get you caught up. Larry's going to interview me in a few minutes about the new iteration. And I didn't say idiot of Mark Smith. I said iteration. Is that the same thing?
No.
But we'll start with Larry. So, first of all, I had a little introduction. I've known Larry, Dr. Larry, for 22 years, and we've always had a connection. I don't know if a connection is like a man crush or in a sexual way or what it is. You remind me of another friend of mine, Lenny, on the basketball court. We just have always had Lenny and I have always had a connection that was just inexplicable just from the day we met. So Larry is on my same frequency, and I'm on Larry's frequency. You'll pick up on that as we talk today. And God, I hope nobody's offended if I use that word, higher power. By the way, I'm trying to look like a sea captain because I'm going to grow my beard for the next 2 or 3 months. And just for fun, I want to look like a sea captain. God knows why. I don't know why.
And I can take you sailing.
Right, you can.
Yeah.
But God has gotten Larry and I together to sort of have a message. He's reviving both of our careers and reinventing both of us, but he's going to help us by doing it together. So don't be underestimate Larry's edginess just because he sort of looks like Mr. Rogers.
Won't you be my neighbor?
I folded that his space is just really lovely and calm, and he's got the sweater going for him. But Larry's a great poet, and before I ask him questions about his background and his experiences, I'm gonna read one of his poems. Larry, share your interest in elk. How did you come across elk?
From living in Colorado, which I did for 16 years, and elk are prevalent in the mountains of Colorado. And my wife Kathy lived at a high elevation in the mountains before we met for quite a while, and so became intimately acquainted with elk and with their goings on. And actually, she and I were attending a a week-long couples therapy thing in the Southwest. This was a number of years ago. And real early in the morning, we heard this clacking sound, and she knew immediately what it was. It was elk that were rutting, that were smacking their horns.
So the poem is called Listen. Trumpeting triumph, bugling victory, the battle won, crashing, clicking, smashing, antlers locked, puffing steam, muscles straining, hooves driven like stakes into granite, echoing across valleys, ricocheting off 14,000-foot snow-covered peaks, sounds of pride mingled with joy. All is calm. The bear forages, the eagle soars, the elk grazes. The shaman knows when the pine needle falls in the forest. The bear smells it, the eagle sees it, and the elk hears it. While sister wisdom, you're going to have to say the last word, Larry, because I had to look at it. I know what it is now.
I don't have it in front of me. What is it?
Auscultates. Explain the last word.
Comprehends, understands, lets it percolate, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Larry's vocabulary is a little wider than mine, so every now and again we'll have to ask him to enlighten me and maybe some of you as well. But I just thought it caught the moment of those two elk in battle. And I think of our interactions with Larry and I, much of it has been focused using poetry and the power of poetry. And so in our work as life coaches, our goal is to name things that are true, to decode things that are true, and to help you guys learn some things. But we're not going to be using a lot of psychological terms. We're going to uncover truth using dream analysis, spirituality, poetry, and stories. So, Larry, you are a minister. You've been a minister for years. Why do you want to switch and be a life coach?
Why do I want to switch and be a life coach? I guess I don't fully see it as a switch. I just see it as more of a growth fulfillment kind of thing. I've always had a heart to help people and be of service to people, and I've always been drawn to people that are hurting or struggling in various ways, which really includes all of us when you come right down to it. I think everybody has something that they're dealing with. Doesn't necessarily have to be something, huge like significant childhood abuse or anything like that, although it can be. So I've always been drawn to folks, and at this juncture in life, I just feel like I'm being led in that direction.
Talk of the sea and talk of sailboats.
Oh, I was born to the sea. I have salt water in my veins, as actually all of us do, literally. My father was an oceanographer, and I grew up on the East Coast, so we were always close to water and sea. All the very early vacations were to the seashore. And then when I was about, I don't know, I was somewhere around 8 or 10, something like that. My father took a job teaching marine ecology at the Marine Biological Laboratory, which is in Woods Hole, Massachusetts. And Woods Hole is a tiny little burg on Cape Cod, which is the epicenter of oceanographic research on the East Coast. And the reason for that is because just off the coast there, the way the currents run, there's a mixture of flora and fauna, marine flora and fauna that's unparalleled anyplace else along the East Coast. And so Woods Hole, there's nothing in Woods Hole except laboratories. That's all that's there, literally. Well, I mean, there's a drugstore and a coffee shop, but the Marine Biological Laboratories there, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, which is world famous, is there. U.S. Department of Fisheries has a big facility there. And so in the summertime, doctoral level scientists come from all over the world to study particular areas. So my dad was teaching marine ecology. So every summer we were there, and I took sailing lessons. And then while I was hanging out I always smile when I say this, at the yacht club, because the yacht club was this tiny little shack it's literally one room. And anyway, it's not what you think of when you think yacht, you know, small sailboats. And a young man in his 20s said, "Hey, my grandpa taught us all to sail, and he's run out of grandchildren and he needs another one. He lives right over there. Go knock on his door." So I did, and I Prince Sears Kroll Sr. became the grandfather I never had. Took me under his wing when I was 8 or 9, and he was in his mid 80s at the time, and taught me almost everything I know about sailing, other than the very basics, which I already knew. And spun stories of guana factories and square rig ships, and he had sailed the mail to the Elizabeth Islands off the coast of Massachusetts before engines were invented. That's how far back he goes. So ever since then, I've just had a love for the sea. And also, in between times, our family outings were always to salt marshes and tide pools and discovering stuff.
Water of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you call the ocean?
What do I call it? My beloved ocean, my beloved sea.
Yeah.
She's my grandmother. The sea is. She's the womb of life.
There you go. So we're thinking about boats, and you fish on boats, and I'm not trying to fish for compliments here, but there was something that sort of drew you to my work. What is spoken to you about the conversations that we've had?
Oh, a lot of things, but I think it's a sense that I always gain from you of unconditional acceptance, and you listen deeply to the stories others are telling, and as you're listening, it's obvious that you really care about that story. You're not just doing it because it's your job. And then in response to those stories, you have periodically some really pretty amazing insights, I think. I mean, life-changing insights. Yeah. So that would be the key, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. You brought up a concern earlier that we might have a bit too much material. I think I'm going to save question number 4 for another episode. That might be an episode in and of itself.
Okay. I don't know what question 4 is, but that sounds good.
It is, what is your most painful memory?
Oh yeah, that's another episode.
That
might be a week-long episode.
Long. Tell us briefly about your family of origin issues.
Okay, I'll try to do that briefly. How far back should I go? Grandparents, you think?
Yeah.
Both of my parents were young adults during the Great Depression and were in their mid-20s during World War II. So they are of that generation. That generation would be in their very late 90s or early 100s now. And they both my parents lost their fathers when they were quite young. My father's father died of kidney failure when my dad was 12. And he had to then, he was expected, and he did, take over the role of, quote, man of the house, caring for his mother for the rest of her life, who never worked, never learned to drive, never lived independently, lived with us the whole time I was growing up and until she died. And also care for his younger sister financially until she eventually married. And then apparently it was her husband's job. But and my dad deeply resented being thrown into that role. And he was, as is typical, I think, of that generation, he was extremely closed in and quiet, non-communicative, and you were often met with silence. And then once in a while, he could ambush you out of the blue with a whole list of complaints that you didn't see coming, which of course produces a lot of shame. My mother's side, my mother's father also died when she was young. He committed suicide when she was, I believe, 7. I always get it mixed up. It's either 5 or 7. I think 7, and her younger brother would have been 5. That was a huge family secret. No one was allowed. No one knew that. I didn't come across it until long after I was an adult and married and had kids of my own. And that then it came as this tremendous shock. And then when I forced the issue and brought it up to her and to her siblings, the response I got from all of them was, they didn't use these words, but it was basically that he was a hero. It was the Great Depression. It was hard to feed all those mouths, and so he took himself out, which I've always thought was complete nonsense. There was no expression of anger at him or even grief, sorrow, grief. It was all like, hey, this is wonderful. And then my mother, a few years later, experienced significant loss of her mother briefly. Well, not briefly, but temporarily. Her mother came down with tuberculosis, and they sent her off to a sanitarium for a year, and the kids were all divided up. And they look at that as being this wonderful, happy time when everything was great. So my parents met when they were in college. My dad was a senior. My mother was a freshman. He went to graduate school. He dropped out of graduate school, joined the Navy. They got married. He went off to sea. He was in the Navy in World War II. And he was, except for times when they brought him back for training, He was at sea for the whole duration of World War II. He was in all three theaters, the Mediterranean Theater, the Atlantic Theater, and the Pacific Theater. Came back, he went back to graduate school, got his PhD in biochemistry. My sister was born, took a postdoctoral position. I was born, moved back to Baltimore, where he was from, grew up in a very lower middle class neighborhood, row homes, blue collar white people mostly. Yeah. So does that help?
If you could, in 2 sentences, just say, what was it like for Larry to grow up in that environment?
Full of shame. Shame was the big word. I mean, nobody used that word, but that is the big descriptive word. Shame that came from the feeling of never being good enough, never being enough, period. And then reacting to shame by pulling back into myself, into a fantasy world, in order to protect oneself, but then carrying that shame, of course, forward, and it becomes part of the story we tell ourselves ongoing through our adult lives.
What I've noticed about you, Larry, is you sort of shifted gears from maybe having shame bully you and kick you around the street to a place of learning how to love yourself, having a little bit of confidence, having a little bit of positive juju, if you will, and you smile a lot more and you laugh a lot more and your eyes are bright. And it seems like God is working in your life.
Yeah, and using you. I mean, and others too. I mean, your books that I'm reading and such. But yeah, you have really helped me to go down that path of self-acceptance and self-love, and you've helped me to see that that's not the same thing as being a narcissist or being an egotistical or that sort of thing.
Thank you, Larry. Before Larry has some questions for me, but a lot of times I get busy during the day and I don't eat. You guys looking at me and you're thinking that guy didn't forget to eat very often. I eat pretty good, but a lot of times it's like late in the day. But they've invented these banana chips where it's a little slice of banana and you can eat. And I could eat bowls of these. Perhaps I shouldn't, but that's what I'm nibbling on if anybody cared. Okay, Larry, your questions for me.
Yeah, I don't know if everybody knows, but Mark is personally responsible for keeping DoorDash in business in the whole region.
Exactly. I need to make the stock go up. Very well, and doubling their business single-handedly.
Yeah. Well, the first question, Mark, is how come you've not been making videos recently? Did you need a break from live stream, or what's happening? What's going on?
I don't know how other YouTube creators operate. I know a lot of them, it's their livelihood and they get up and go to work and make their videos because it's their job. And I wait until God inspires me. Sometimes he'll just tap me on the shoulder, and sometimes there'll be a thunderbolt that'll hit me in the skull. But I don't just make videos to make videos. And I think that the way life works, sometimes we get into a rut and we're so used to being the self that we've always been that we're not open to being a new iteration, a new invention, a new creation of ourselves, because it's such human nature to avoid change. So I quit making videos, one, because I wasn't feeling inspiration. And number two, I've been working recently real hard on probably my main, work is probably my main addiction for my lifetime, but maybe my most destructive addiction has been relationship or love addiction. So I've been doing a lot of 12-step work and just taking care of myself in that regard. But then God comes along and says, hey, do something different. You know, read some poems and hang out with Larry, and don't be a therapist, be an encoder of happenings. So this right here is not work. I've been looking forward to this for, a while. I get excited about it. So that's why I haven't been making videos.
Well, where'd that phrase, where'd that phrase, encoder of happenings, where'd that come from?
Well, I have this client, and I won't say much about her because she really covets her confidentiality. I don't want anybody to know who it is. But she's on my frequency, which means she's on Larry's frequency. And we use metaphor, we use dream analysis, we use poetry. Every time I read a poem, she breaks out and weeps. And we had a particularly powerful session where in the Bible, the story of Joseph, where he had this cool coat of many colors. His dad set him up. He was the favorite child, so his brothers sold him off. He ends up in Egypt, and then he gets framed for a crime he didn't commit. He's sitting in jail, and he starts having dreams. And then it comes to the attention of the Pharaoh that he's having these dreams. And I think a really seasoned healer sometimes has the ability to interpret and decode and happenings. And this woman had a lot of things going on in her life, and I knew exactly what they were as soon as she told me them, and it just blew her ever loving mind. And she said, this isn't therapy. What you're doing right now is decoding happenings. It's like a bigger picture. It's like therapy works on the psychological, but what she needed was a healing of her vision, going forward. And there's three groups of people that I can think are decoders of happenings. One is a prophet. Another one would be a poet. And another one would be a healer. And so I believe that God is promoting me from therapist to healer. And it's really sort of fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How does, sometimes in our conversations, you and I, you use the word wholeheartedness a lot of times. Talk some more about that.
I was listening last night to my favorite poet, David Whyte, Whyte.
I thought I was your favorite poet.
No, you're second. Very close, Larry. But many of you know who David White is, and he's a prophet and a poet and a healer rolled into one. And I was listening to one of the books that he has on poetry last night, and he said he was having a rough day one day, and he sat at the table and he could see the Puget Sound and a big bottle of fine red wine right in front of him. He said he didn't gulp the wine down because he had a bad day. He said he had a guest that night. I think his name was Brother Stendhal something or other. But he was, I don't know if he was a priest but he was something along those lines. And he was just a very wise man. And the way they would pass their evenings is they would drink that very big, fine bottle of red wine while the brother would read Rilke in German, and David White would read Wilkie in English, and they would just party. You know, it sounds like they were on our frequency. They just had better language skills, perhaps.
Yeah.
So, but David White asked this wise man. He was feeling exhaustion. He goes, "Tell me about exhaustion." And he said, "The antidote for exhaustion is not rest." And David White said, "So the antidote for exhaustion is not rest. Well, what is it?" And this brother, this wise man, this poet said, "Wholeheartedness." Antidote for exhaustion is wholeheartedness. So I've been a therapist for 33 years, and I'm exhausted being a therapist. People that watch this, don't call and cancel your appointments. I had one lady, when I said I needed a break from the video, she called to cancel because she didn't want to run me into the ground. I said, "I'm okay. I'm just talking about long-term vision, where I'm headed, where I believe God is leading me." And Larry, I hope, is more to a coaching model than a therapist model, more toward poetry and dream analysis and working with a partner, and hopefully growing into somebody who can have an impact on our culture as a prophet, as a poet, and as a healer. No David White, but I think between Larry and I, we might be able to decode some happenings. So I've never had a partner on YouTube for like extended periods of time. Renda and I would do some shows together, but Batman had Robin. Who are those two movie guys? Ebert and Siskel.
Siskel and Ebert.
One of them died. Was it Siskel?
Yeah, he died first. I think. Aren't they both dead now? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I know Siskel died. He had brain cancer and died
Siskel
fairly young.
had Ebert. Green Hornet had Cato.
Bert had Ernie.
The more we work together, you're probably going to think that I'm Robin and he's Batman, but
no,
I'm framing it that way for now. So, and then the other part of the work is, again, the 12-step work that I've begun on love addiction. So I'm really excited, and we have a show. That was all to say, we're just introducing ourselves, and now we're going to have a show. We should probably cut it off here and make 2 shows, but
yeah. Before we do that, though, what's the difference between love addiction and sex addiction?
Thank you. Sex addiction is just what it sounds like. Somebody might be addicted to pornography. That's probably the most common, to masturbation, to having affairs. There's so many ways to act out now, and it's so easy with the internet and cell phones. They might, visit massage parlors. There's just so many ways that it shows itself, objectifying women. And I'm not a sexual addict, but I have suffered from love addiction. And what that is because I was abandoned so young as a child, I have suffered from a yearning, an emptiness, a neediness from time to time, where I latch on to a woman, probably to be my mommy. And a lot of them have turned out to be forms of my mommy that brought a lot of challenge and growth and learning to me. So I'm facing it sort of head on, but it's a very powerful addiction. It's more about talking and texting and emailing. It's less about the sexual component, although there is that as well. So
awesome.
So I want to start with a quote from the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. It's a famous quote. In the middle of my life, I found myself in a dark wood where the true way was wholly lost. I'm going to live to 122 if this is right in smack dab in the middle of my life. Larry, how long are you going to do this? Is a little weird.
That puts me well into my mid-hundreds.
Okay, we fudged a little bit on the quote. 3/4 the way through our life, we found ourselves in a dark wood where the true way was wholly lost. And I believe that I'm in a place of renewal and redirection and reinvention, and I know Larry is. And we were at a place where it was a dark wood and the true way was wholly lost. But we're on this adventure of taking one day at a time and dealing with issues head on and feeling the pain, embracing friendship and embracing creativity. And who knows what's going to happen, but it's going to be a whole lot of fun because it's something that Larry and I are doing wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Amen.
So I'm going to jump in here, Larry. Larry and I didn't get a chance to collaborate a bunch this week about the show. We're flying sort of by the seat of our drawers here. But I thought of some words that might describe our calling in this work, in this developing episode 1 show. But jump in with your own words. You just wave me off and I'll shut up and you jump in. So what I thought of is if any of these sound like something you could use, then this is the show for you. One is to live and to promote wholeheartedness. Secondly is to gain vision and strength and courage from poetry. Third is dancing with words. I like to dance with words. The fourth is the antidote to shame. Self-permission, self-love. We're also about freedom. One of my favorite poems, Sweet Darkness, that I'll read by David White. One of the most powerful parts of the poem, he says, you must learn one thing. You must learn one thing, that the world was made for freedom. The world was made to be free, and I think is the exact quote. And anything that doesn't bring you alive is too small for you. I don't care if it's the presidency of the United States or how big of a job it is. If it's not bringing you alive, it's too small for you. We're going to learn how to feel and exhibit joy. We're hopefully going to have some stunning insights for you. We'll probably develop a question and answer part of the show where we decode some of your life happenings. We're going to play with the concept of resiliency, of reinventing yourself, of spirituality, of 12-step recovery, of genuine, healthy love, of being authentic, of having wild moments. Do you have very many wild moments, Larry?
I don't know about wild, but along those lines, I would I might add, I think we were designed to create beauty, and some people can create beauty, you know, by I have a friend in New York who writes opera music. You know, it's his way of creating beauty. Others, it might be painting or poetry or playing with children, or I mean, the list is endless. But I think we're all designed to create beauty, and a lot of stuff, including shame, gets in the way of that. So rediscovering maybe how to join in with one another and create beauty in our relationships and our daily lives.
Amen. So, in my workaholism, in my childhood, there was a lot of seriousness and chaos and pain. So I didn't really get to be a kid. So I didn't learn how to play very well. And I've spent a lot of my 61 years working, and I enjoy work. But part of my treatment plan, so to speak, is to learn to have healthy wild moments, and to have exuberance and adventure outside of doing this work. We're also going to be about grace, forgiveness, like Larry just said, creativity, about life coaching, about partnership, restoration of people's vision and guests, including our own, and setting people free with stone cold truth. Sometimes, if you're one of those three, if you're a prophet, if you are a poet, if you are a healer, sometimes you just have the right words and they come out and they cut people up in a good way, and they light them on fire and then bring them back to life. And so we're going to attempt to do some of that.
Sounds like fun. I'm glad you clarified a healthy wild, not dangerous wild.
No, not acting out wild either.
Yeah. Mark's not talking about, like, you know, trying to jump his motorcycle over 16 school buses or anything.
No. I'm going to start with a poem by the Irish poet Patrick Kavanagh called "The Self-Slaved." And this isn't his full poem. I read the full poem and I didn't get half of it. It just didn't speak to me, probably because I just didn't have the wisdom or the insight to handle it. David White read the whole thing and he interpreted the whole thing, but I don't want to copy using his thoughts. Had you heard this poem before, the Self-Slaved?
No, I haven't.
Was that the one you said you liked, or was it a different one?
That was the one. Yeah.
Okay. So So who are we talking to? We're talking to people who are discouraged, people who are sad. You know what? In the middle of COVID, there's a whole lot of people who are sad. There are a whole lot of people who are discouraged. They're lonely. I just went and got the Time magazine from downstairs in my mailbox, and it had the scary words COVID winter written on a icy window. And it was scary looking. So life is discouraging and painful enough, but when you throw winter and COVID in together, it's hard. With 12-step work, there's a phrase called, you got to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. You have to hit bottom. And it's not just alcoholics that hit bottom. Sometimes it's therapists. Sometimes it's ministers. Sometimes it's any line of work that you've allowed yourself to sort of get into a routine and lose your energy and your spark. So Kavanaugh says, me, I will throw away. Me, I will throw away. Me, sufficient for the day. The sticky self that clings adhesions on the wings, preventing love and adventure. In my interpretation of the poem, I changed a couple of words. I hope that Kavanaugh doesn't arise from the grave and haunt me tonight. But I thought it might. I think what he was saying was that the sticky self, the ego, the sinful self, the addiction self, clings to wounds on the wings, and it doesn't lead to love and adventure. It prevents love and adventure.
You might call that the false self.
The false self, exactly. Then he says, to go on the grand tour, a man must be free from self-necessity. I love this concept of the grand tour. Many decades. Are you familiar with it, Larry?
Well, no, I don't know what exactly you're referring to, but I like that term.
Yeah. Many decades ago, the final work of a cultured gentleman in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
They would the wealthy ones, about 20, 21, 22, they would complete their studies by traveling through Germany and England and Ireland, meeting great poets and writers and artists. It was a way of living the art, but you had to be mighty wealthy. And here Kavanaugh didn't have two nickels to rub together, but he says, to go on the grand tour, a man must be free from self-necessity. I was at a 12-step meeting recently. I think it was at a 12-step meeting. It might have been one of our staff meetings, I'm not sure. But they likened going to a fancy treatment center to getting on a cruise ship and cruising the world in luxury. And I've been on a lot of cruise ships, real ones and treatment center ones. But a 12-step program is more like a 12-man rowboat. Nothing fancy about it, but everybody has to pull together to get anywhere. And I've tried the cruise ship version, and I still have my addiction, so I'm gonna try the rowboat instead. Throw away thy sloth self, carry off your wrath with its self-righteous, satirizing blotches. I love that. no self, no self overexposure. Throw away thy sloth self, carry off your wrath with its self-righteous, satirizing blotches. No self to be overexposed. So I think the poet is talking again about ego and pride and how ugly it is. Blotches. And wrath and sloth and self and rage and self-pity and being too self-centered or ugly, things that cut you off from yourself and cut you off from other people. Here's my favorite stanza. I will have love. I will have love and a life with a shapely form, with gaiety and charm, and capable of receiving with grace, the grace of living, and wild moments too, self when freed. I will have love. I will have love in all its many different forms, and a life with a shapely form, with gaiety and charm, and capable of receiving with grace the grace of living, and wild moments too, self when free. What comes up for you, Larry, as you hear those words?
Oh, all kinds of things. Coming from a Christian tradition, I love the concept of God being family. So, you know, we speak of the Trinity, three persons of family and relationship. God always in relationship, and inviting us into relationship. So much love that it can't be contained. It spills over into creation and invites us into this eternal dance. That image of dancing came up in the poem, and just think of the music of the spheres. You know, the whole universe in this joining together in this beautiful dance, and us being invited into that dance.
When I was in Bible school, a lot of you don't know, I went to Bible school in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Rhema Bible Training Center. There was this Southern preacher there, and he'd preach and he'd go, "I done preached myself happy." And he goes, "I may go to dancing." And so if we get into some really good poetry and you want to do a river dance, Larry, just don't hold yourself back. Just get up and do it. So the poem ends with the word son, but I changed it in our case to brother. I will have love. I will have love, and a life with a shapely form, with gaiety and charm, and capable of receiving with grace the grace of living, and wild moments too, where you're alive, self when freed. Brother, we'll both go off together in this delightful weather.
That's beautiful.
We have had some delightful weather this year, even in November.
Yeah. Hey, spell the name of the poet for those of us that want to look it up.
It starts with a K. You think Kavanaugh would start with
a C.
C.
Yeah.
This might be misspelled. I have it spelled Kavanagh. I think that's misspelled, but just Kavanaugh with a K, basically.
Mhm. And the name of the poem is?
The name of the poem is The Self-Slaved.
Self-Slaved.
So you can
Yeah, that's worth Googling.
what?
Said that's worth Googling.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Okay. Another wonderful poem about freedom and love and dancing by the great poet Derek Walcott. It's called Love After Love. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here, eat. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelves. Take down the photographs and the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror and sit and feast on your life. Feast on your life. Trying to keep from crying.
There's nothing wrong with crying. It's a beautiful description of self-acceptance, of discovering that little child that lives within all of us, and embracing her, embracing him in grace and in mercy and love, and an expression of entering into that experience of being fully human and fully alive, which is another way of describing that dance or that creativity, that beauty that we're invited to participate in. Love it.
I'm going to read it again. It's so good. Love after love. Everywhere I go, every book I read, every 12-step meeting I attend, every therapist I see, what are they saying? It almost sounds like a cliche, but it's not. You can't love anybody until you love yourself. You can consume somebody, you can manipulate somebody, but you can't really love them. You can't even see them until you've healed yourself and until you love yourself. The time will come when, with elation, you'll greet yourself arriving at your own door. You're ready to do business. You're ready to answer the call. In your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, sit here and eat. Let's hang out together. I had dinner the other night with a fellow who's been divorced about a year, and he said, I sure do enjoy my own company. I couldn't say the same. I've been going through withdrawal of some relationship addiction, and Mr. Polly doesn't do a lot of tricks. We don't do a lot of exciting things. So there's been some sadness and some loneliness.
Does everybody know who Mr. Polly is?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
Eagle. Can see him. I don't think they can see him. He's just out of, maybe they can see him on that side. There he is. The wonder dog. Well, it's his diaper. You can see his diaper. I'm sorry, Polly, for showing your diaper.
Yeah.
You will love again. Who will you love? You'll love the stranger who was your own self. Decades clip by pretty quick. And who you were in your 30s could be vastly different from who you are even in your 40s or 50s, 60s for sure. You will love again the stranger, the one you've become disconnected with, who was your own very own self. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart. Give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life. The stranger has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another. What relationship addicts tend to do, they tend to make gods of lovers or parents of lovers. Or people make a god of alcohol or drugs or religion or food or work, or there's so many things to numb oneself out on and ignore the core of your being. Give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your image from the mirror. Sit down and feast on good memories. Feast on some achievements that were special in your life. Feast on some of the positive qualities that you have. Feast on some of the encouraging words you've heard from teachers or coaches or people that you've worked with. Feast on the gifts that you've been given. Feast on the beauty that you have. As we get older, we become a little less pretty, don't we, Larry?
Well, speak for yourself.
But with aliveness and spirituality and the grace of God and wholeheartedness, by feasting on your life, you can have a whole nother special kind of beauty. Any parting compliments, not parting compliments, parting comments, my brother?
I think you said it all. It's, yeah, the it seems like a theme we've kind of, that has emerged that's weaving through this time we've had together today, has been that theme of beauty, and beauty within, beauty around, entering into that beauty, learning to see that beauty. And I think probably the hardest place to see it is in ourselves.
Exactly. I think that's exactly the message is get to know yourself and get to know the good qualities. Don't put a blind eye to the bad qualities, but don't bludgeon yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Be liberal with self-permission. Be liberal with grace and kindness towards yourself. We hope that this has spoken to y'all. We don't know where we're going. We don't know what we're doing. We're just doing what we're led to do. But we do think that there's an edge, there's a freshness that might be able to help people and speak to them. So thank you for watching, and God bless.
Thank you. Good night or goodbye, whatever time you're watching this.